Okie dokie. So now let's apply this to a diary card. Filling out a diary card is about as novel and awkward, I think, for most of us as it is for a dog to walk over and flip a light switch. So shaping is required, and the way you get this going can be really important in terms of the early reinforcement, etc. So here's some other key concepts we want to get across. Responses. So what we're looking for is actually quite a complicated response, being able to track, be organized enough to even report what is happening, remember to do it, know where your diary card is. Like there's just a lot of responses that are required. Understand what the terms mean. There's a lot of learning here. So when you're thinking about getting this started, often you're going to start way back at a more preliminary behavior. At least with some clients, it's really going to be quite an effort to shape getting a diary card completed. So I'm going to give you an assignment that you'll see in the learning community that asks you some questions about this. So what could be some early things you would look for to catch and reinforce? But here's the thing, consequences, and when we talk about reinforcement and punishment, you really have to look at how does that consequence, the thing that follows the behavior, affect the future probability of filling out the diary card, okay? So praise can be either reinforcing or punishing. It can increase or decrease the behavior, okay? So for some people, if you praise them, you say, hey, this looks great. Great job. That must have been pretty hard to get yourself to do it. Something like that. If you praise the person for filling out the diary card, that can actually function as a punisher, as an aversive consequence, as something that decreases the probability they will do it in the future. Do you know, can you think of why? What kind of learning history? Praise may serve as a discriminative stimuli. As soon as you praise, it sets up the situation that punishment could be coming next. Your expectations are up. They know from past history that they're just going to fail. And so praise actually is a negative. Like they want to do things that will get away from situations that are going to evoke praise. Does that make sense? So you have to know your client, whether or not the thing you're doing actually increases or decreases. So here you see I put SRT means stimulus that's reinforcement, and SP means stimulus that's punishing. So you'll see me use these terms, and you can use them as shorthand too if you want. What if you think about what is naturally reinforcing for doing a diary card, for communicating about your life via a diary card? I would say the main thing about it is functional validation. In other words, when I, the therapist, get that information from the client, I am more useful to them. I understand them more. I say things that are more relevant. I'm more tuned in. So functional validation means that this actually works as a great communication device, that it might generate empathy. It might in some way work the way that the client would like the diary card to work. So I'm going to ask you again, like what would be some examples for clients you have that might be functional validation? How do you functionally validate anybody you're working with? And then the last one I want to highlight is for some people, actually, praise, functional validation, all of that is not reinforcing. If you want more diary card, more accurate reporting, more of the columns filled out, the way to get that is actually to change the topic so that you see the diary card and instead of increasing intensity, oh, wow, etc., all enthusiasm, increasing pressure, instead of that, you note it and in a very low-key way say, wow, thank you. This is so helpful to me. It lets me see at a glance where things have been hard. Let's move on into talking about what's on your agenda, something like that. So you might present the cue, but because focusing on themselves or because they're worried about scrutiny or because they feel shame, it increases shame when you ask, or even for some people just the intensity of eye gaze, there can be lots and lots of things. So, but if you remove attention, remove a sense of scrutiny, that can be reinforcing. So the person hands you the diary card, you're interested, and the pressure goes away. Think of a car alarm. The best way to think about this is it's negative. You're taking something away, and by taking something away, you increase the probability, right? So when your car's alarm goes off and starts dinging at you so that you will buckle your seatbelt, you buckle your seatbelt and it turns off that annoying noise, and that reinforces you for putting your seatbelt on, okay? In the same way, changing the topic, even if you come back to it a moment later, changing the topic slightly decreases the aversiveness, removes the aversive stimuli, like turns off the seatbelt alarm, and therefore might increase. For some people, it might increase the probability of doing the diary card. So you have to really think about your person and what is likely to increase their response on the diary card of filling it out. So we're going to talk about shaping diary card completion. We're going to talk about the types of consequences that actually work for people. And then how do you get the cues going? So I gave you another clip that was about habits by Charles Duhigg. I think it's a really nice one to just think about. But how can you create the kinds of cues that will set up, that will make it clear that this type of reinforcement is coming, okay? So things like always asking for it, always having an extra to communicate it's important. At the very beginning, I'll move out of the way here, there may be things you do that really set up this whole sequence to be available to the person, to be relevant. In other words, to make them hungry for diary cards. Like what can set off hunger, wishing, valuing, completing diary cards. Okay, so I'm going to ask you some about that, and I'll give you my answers about how I orient in a little modeling clip next week. And I hope that was helpful. Okay, this is a little 101 version.